All right, so we're going to do a little database activity just to get you familiar with a few basic things. So if you're using the remote access application, I'd like you to go into mapped drives and then find the database that we downloaded, and that's the one called spelling tests. If you're on a PC, if you go to your the area where you've created your Unit 2 databases folder, find the spelling tests and open it up that way. So I'll do it for the PC and then we'll go back to remote desktop. So if you remember, if you're using the remote desktop, you had your U drive, your user area, and in there you'd created a Unit 2 databases folder and spelling test. And there's the Access database, which I'd like you to open. And as you click on it, it will open in Access in that browser tab that you've got open there. Okay, so I've got Access open and you can see that we've got tabs going across the top and we've got menus run across the top as well. So we've got various, and throughout the course you'll start to learn what all those tabs do. On the left-hand side, you'll see Access Objects, and this is the parts of the database that we're going to be working on. This database has already been created for you, so you will see that you've got tables, queries, forms, and reports. So we've already done exercises previously to understand what each of those things are, but I'll quickly go over that again. So tables are the objects inside a database where the data is stored, and they're normally stored in tables, and tables look like this. This is a very tiny table, and this table is all about classes. So the database as a whole is all about a primary school and the spelling tests that the students go through. So there's one table with the data, which is all about the classes. And here's another one, which is all about the students within those classes. All these database tables are linked together. This is a relational database. And I'm just going to show you where to have a look at the relationships between the tables. So I'm in Database Tools and in Relationships. And you can see that there are links. So on your database, if you could have a go at finding this, and there are links and they're all joined up like this. Please don't unlink them, otherwise you'll have problems with later things that you're going to do. But they're all linked up, and as we go through the course, you'll understand more about how those are linked up. So activity 1 in the worksheet that you've been given is just simply to show a screenshot of the relationship between your tables in your database. So that is activity 1. Show a screenshot of the relationships in the database that you've been given. So just pause the video and do that now. Next, we're just going to close that relationships down after you have done your screenshot. I'm going to close my tables down as well. So let's have a look at one of these tables. So first of all, you can see that there is a suffix on each of the object names. So a suffix is some text that goes before a word. And in this case, for tables, the suffix is TBL. And the reason we use TBL is to indicate that that object is a table. We'll look at the other suffixes as we go through the other objects. So we're just going to open up the student or pupil table. So table, pupil. You'll also notice that there is a capitalized letter when we've got the name of the actual table, and that indicates what is shown in that table. So we know this is a table and it's all about the pupils in the classes. And this one, we know it's a table and it's all about the results of their spelling tests. And you can see that we've got the suffix in lowercase and then uppercase for the description of what is in that table. So here with spelling test, you've got an uppercase S and an uppercase T. There's a special term for this. This is called Camel Case. Yep, like the animal, Camel Case. So this is where you have a suffix and then you have an uppercase for the description of what's in the table. And you'll also notice there are no spaces. So Camel Case is where you have uppercase and no spaces, and we have a suffix at the beginning to identify the type of object. Inside your table pupil, we'll open that up, just a double click. you'll see that you've got a list of names of all the pupils in the classes. You've also then got an indication of what class they're actually in, and there are only 3 classes, class 1, 2 or 3. You'll also see that each student has a unique number for themselves. So this is the pupil ID. So currently we're in the view where you can actually see the table. We're going to change the view now, and we're going to have a look at design view. So in the home tab on the left hand side, you can see this, it's like a ruler and a pencil icon, and it says view. And in there, we're going to go from datasheet view, which is where we are at the moment, and we're opening up design view. So this is a very different view. This is like the back end of the database, so we can see how it was actually set up. So here we've got all the fields which are in the database. If I show you back to datasheet view, you can see the fields are listed across the top. Back into design view. As I go through them, you can see at the bottom, we've got field properties. And we've also got some properties up here. So for my surname field, I've set that data as a short text because it is text. First name, I've also set up as short text. And then the actual class ID, which is they're in class 1, 2 or 3, that's a number field. So here we are setting up how we want the data to be displayed in datasheet view. Another thing that we've got in the field properties area is we've got other properties that we can set up. So in this case, for the first name, I've got it as 30 characters long. That's how long it should be. And pretty much there are no first names which are longer than 30 characters. So this limits how much space is being taken up by our database. So we can set up field sizes in there. So activity 2 is to do these things. You'll be asked to explain what Camel Case is. You'll be asked to explain why we use suffixes, little TBLQLYs there, and you'll be asked for a screenshot of the design view, this view, of the pupil table. So it's quite simple. You're going to explain what are suffixes, you're going to explain what Camel Case is, and you're going to show a screenshot of the design view of the pupil table. When you do the screenshot of the design view of the table pupil, I'm going to give you a quick trick as how to do this. You'll be doing lots of screenshots in your actual exam, so I'll just give you a quick trick now. So what we want to do is make sure we're not having ridiculously long screenshots. So what I do is I go here and I just shrink the database up a little bit. So now I haven't got a crazy big gap. So when I do my screenshot, if you're on a Chromebook or Mac, you'll do this differently, but I'm going to use the snipping tool on a PC. I'm going to show the entire bits that are important, and the bits that are important are here. So the tab at the top, which says table pupil, and then the actual fields and the properties within it. So the screenshot should look something like, let me do that one more time, from here to there. That would be a really good screenshot because you're showing everything and the screenshot isn't too long. So just like that, please. So just pause the video and complete activity 2 in the worksheet. Okay, so now we understand that tables are used to store data, and we know that there are naming protocols that we use, and we know that there's a suffix, which is a lowercase 3-letter suffix, which indicates what kind of object it is, and we understand Camel Case, which is where we capitalize the first letter of each word, and there are no spaces. We're going to have a very quick look at queries. So you're going to close down the tables or any tabs that you have open. Normally in a database, you would keep only one tab open as you work because sometimes there's a conflict otherwise. So here we have 2 queries. Now queries are used to select different criteria or to select different records according to criteria. So we're going to have a quick look at the queries here. So let's open up query percentage test score. And we have, again, just like with tables, we have two views. We have the datasheet view, which shows the data. And then we have the design view. As we said before, it looks like a ruler with a pencil. So we'll look at design view. So design view is where we set up the criteria of what we're searching for in a database. And this particular query is used to do a calculation. And the calculation that's been created is how to create the percentage. So these kids are doing tests, like spelling tests. There is a score for each test and they are awarded points. So we wanted to work out calculate the percentage that they had scored. So there's a calculation in there. Let me show you the design view, datasheet view. So we can see all the children's names. We can see the score that they got in the test. We can see how many points were available in that test, and then that has calculated the percentage. So that's quite an advanced feature in a query to be able to do calculations, and we'll do that within the first few weeks of you learning this. So now you are going to create a query for yourself. So close down the query that you had open. If it asks you to save changes, say yep. And that should sit nicely on the left-hand side then. So follow me and let's create a query for ourselves. So we're going to click on Create, and then we're going to click on Query Design. So that's Create, Query Design. And then if all these things pop up on the right, we're just going to close those down for a second. And what you've got is you've got a blank screen at the top and you've got kind of a grid thing at the bottom. So what we need first of all, before we create a query, is something to create a query on. And we're going to start with table pupil. So from the left-hand panel, which is where all your objects are shown, I want you to drag TBL pupil into the blank area at the top. So we're just going to simply drag TBL pupil into the top. And just make sure you can see it all there. So now we've got some data that we can actually do a bit of a query on. So what I'm going to ask you to do is double click on surname and you'll see it pops up in the grid. Double click on first name and double click on class ID. And you can see that those fields have popped into the query grid at the bottom. If you make a mistake, don't worry, you can just go to the top of a field and click with a little black arrow there, click there, and then press delete on your keyboard. So if you put too many objects in there, don't worry, just delete them. But what your query should look like is this: table pupil surname, table pupil first name, table pupil class ID. Let's have a look at that before we do anything with it. So we're going to click on the datasheet view. And we can see that basically we've just asked that query to show us all the students' surnames, all their first names, and what class they're in. Very straightforward. But we haven't done anything yet with this query, so we're going to do that now. So we're going to click on the design view, and we're going to do something very straightforward. So on this grid, you can see it's got field, table, sort, and show criteria all. So we want to be in the criteria row, and we want to be under the column called class ID. So criteria row, class ID. And we're going to select all the children who are in class number 3. So simply all we do is click 3 in there. So it's now set up a query. We said the criteria that we're looking for is that the number 3 must appear in the class ID. And I'm going to click on this run button to see what happens. So now you can see that it's basically filtered out everything other than the number 3. So we can just see the students who are in class 3. We're going to go back to design view. I'm going to change that to 2, run that again. So we're in the design tab to see where that run button is. And now it's just picked up the children who are in class 1. What I'd like to do is I'd like you to now just run a query which shows the children in class number 1. So your next activity, your activity number 3, is to create a query, which we've already done, but it only selects the children in class number 1. Once you've done that, what I'd like you to do is show 2 screenshots in the activity on your worksheet. One screenshot that shows the design view. The design view is the one where you've got the grid. And one screenshot which shows the datasheet view, which shows all the children that are in class number 1. So your activity is to change this query and just show the children in class 1. Put in your 2 screenshots, one design view. In design view, make sure you have the whole of the grid and the whole of the area at the top. And in datasheet view, you want to show a screenshot that shows all the datasheet results. And then we're going to save this query. So you're going to click on the Save button. No, you're not. We'll do it a different way. We're going to click on to close that query, and we do want to save it. So we're going to say, yup. And you're going to call it QRY. So there's the suffix. Now that needs to be in lowercase. And then we're going to call it pupils in classes. And you can see what we used our Camel Case there. So capital P, capital I, capital C, and no spaces in between. Then we're going to click on OK. And you can see on the left now that you've got QRY, pupil in classes. And so we can just open that query up again and design it again and make changes to it. So your job, just to clarify, is to create that query and make sure you're showing all the children in class number 1. Show design view as a screenshot, show datasheet view as a screenshot, and then show another screenshot which shows that you've saved it, calling it query QRY, pupils in classes. So we've had a look at queries, and we understand that they can be used to select data, and we can do calculations in there, all sorts of things we can do with queries, which we'll learn as we go through the course. We're going to have a very quick look now at forms. Now, forms are the interface that we normally have with a database. So interface is basically how we as humans communicate with a computer. So let me show you one of my forms. So the first form here is where a teacher would enter the results of a spelling test. And you've got instructions on the form, and you've got things to do with drop downs and bits and pieces. The other form is a lot simpler, and this is just adding a new pupil to a class. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use a form. Later in the course, we'll obviously be designing forms, and you'll be designing these interfaces yourself. So the first one I want you to open, so I'm just going to close down everything else I've got open. We'll try and get in the habit of just having one tab open so there isn't any conflict. So the first one is form, which is called Add a New Student. And you'll see it's like this. It's got a blue bar across the top. So you basically follow the instructions, and it says click Add Record. So I'm going to click Add Record. And then I'm going to select which class this child is going to go into. So you can select whichever one you want. And then I'm going to type in the child's surname. So you can call the child anything you like. And at the end, I'm just going to click on Save Record. It doesn't seem to have done anything, but it has done something. So we need to think about now, which table has that data gone into? So I've entered this data on the interface, which is a form, but the data's gone somewhere. And the place that we store data is tables. So we're going to have a look at the table where we think that data has gone into. So if we're entering a new pupil, hopefully the data will have gone into the table pupil table. Let's have a look. So I scroll to the bottom. New class member is Lucy Channon. She's pupil ID number 25, and she's in class 1. We'll do that one more time. So I'll add another record. This time we have a new class member in Maple class. and his surname is Rolf, and his first name is Barry. I'm going to save that record, and I'm going to open up table pupil again. Is he there? There he is, Barry Rolf. So your job for activity number 4 is to add 3 new students. Make up their names, you put them in whichever class you like, and then I want to see a screenshot of the table pupil with those new class members in. So when you do this, when you do your screenshot, however you do your screenshots, if you could make sure you show the entire table with those new students at the bottom. So activity number 4 is to add 3 more students, and I'd like you to use that form to do that, and then show evidence that those 3 students have been saved by putting a screenshot in to show their names. So we're still looking at forms. I'm just going to close my tabs down, and let's look at that other form, which is enter test results. Again, you see this form is slightly more complicated, not very complicated though, so it gives you steps. So when you create your interfaces, your forms, you will have on-screen instructions. So you click and add a new record here. You can have a play with this. You pick which test that the child sat, and then it says select the correct pupil, so you can select whoever it is that you think did the test. You can see that the points available in this test were 20. So let's give young, what's his name? Ned Basser. Perhaps he did really well in that one. And then we just save that in there. So then what I want you to do is think about where that result went. So think about the data you've just entered, and then have a look at the tables to see if you can find which table that data went into. So finally, we're going to do activity 5 from the worksheet, and activity 5 is having a quick look at reports. So here on my object list, you can see the reports. I've got 2 reports set up, and reports are used to display or to print data. So they need to be kind of in a presentable format. So this is the way that you'd present data to your boss or somebody. So let's have a look at this first one, report student list. So this is a list of students, and it's been broken down by which class they're in, and it displays the teacher's name, how many students are in there, and the students that are in each class. So a fairly straightforward report showing all the kids in different classes, and that's been set up quite nicely. It's quite presentable, so I'll be able to print that out and give it to someone, or send it as a PDF in an email. Let's have a look at the other one, which is report test scores. So again, we have the suffix, which is RPT, to indicate that it's a report. And then we've used Camel Case, capitalized letters, no spaces. So this naming convention for the name of this one. So on this one, we've got test scores. So we've got the classes, we've got the kids' names, we've got which test they took, what level the test was, and how much they scored out of the points available, and the percentage that they got. And that would just, as we add more students to our list of test scores, that would get bigger and bigger. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a go at just making it look a little bit neater and tidier. So we're going to actually go into design view of this report. So at the moment we are in report view. So you can see from the home tab here, I've got various different views to look at, and we're going to go into design view. So design view looks a little bit scary, but don't worry, it's not really scary. And what I'm going to get you to do is just one little job. So in report view, at the moment, the class names are quite small. I want those bigger and bolder, so it really stands out in this report. So in design view, all we have to do is look for class name, which is just there. And we're going to go across the top to format. And I'm just going to put that in bold, and I'm going to make the font a bit bigger. And I might even change the color of it as well, I think. And then I'm going to go back to my home tab and go to report view. And now I can see that my class names are bigger and bolder. They really stand out quite well. I think I might make another change as well. I think I might just put in the percentage that the student scored into bold as well. So we're going to go back into Design View. And over here, this is the labels across the top of the report, and this is the actual data within the report. And this data was actually produced by doing a calculation. But what I want to do is just make it show up in bold. So back to Format, make sure I've got that bit of data highlighted. There we go. Put it into bold. So again, it should stand out nicely when I present the report. So back to Home, and I'm going to View, Report View. And now you can see that that data is nicely in bold. One more job. Design View. We're going to put all the labels into bold as well. In fact, not all of them. Let's just do a couple of them. So I'm highlighting this one. So I clicked into percentage. I'm holding down my Shift key, and I'm just going to highlight the score as well. So these two I want to go into bold. Format, bold. Let's check that's happened. I have to do them individually. That's better. They're both in bold. You can see the bold is standing out there. Home, and then back to Report View, and those are nicely up in bold now. So what I'd like you to do is go and play with this report, and I'd like you to make the class name bigger and bolder, perhaps change the colour of the font, and I'd like you to put some bold elsewhere in that report as well. And then what I'd like you to do is take a screenshot of your end result, and I'll show you the kind of screenshot we want. So spend a few minutes changing the formatting of this report, and then your screenshot should show the changes that you've made just in Report View. So just to clarify, activity number 5 in your worksheet is to edit the report called Test Scores, and I'd like you to put some bold on there and then a screenshot at the end. So that's activity 5. Just make your report look a little bit more presentable. So there you have it. That's a very basic introduction into databases and the database that you're going to be using, which is Microsoft Access. Just before we go, just make sure that you do save the changes that you made to that database. So this is what you're going to be working on as we go through Unit 2. We're going to start very basic though. You'll start building your own databases from scratch. And by the end of it, you'll be able to create a little database like this, which has got relationships. You'll be feeling much more confident to do all sorts of advanced queries. You'll be able to create interfaces by creating forms, and you'll present your data beautifully by creating well-presented, well-formatted forms. So that's just a basic introduction to a little bit of all the things that you're going to be doing in the next unit.